One of my feminist friends, whom I hope is watching this, has joked, at least I hope it's a joke, maybe it isn't. But anyway, she has said that occasionally, as her daughter leaves for school in the morning, she will give her a kiss and wave as she heads for the bus and say, "Have a good day, honey. Crush the patriarchy." Well, when you read this passage from Genesis 29, you'll understand what she's talking about because it presupposes a very, very male centered social structure. But it still has things worth hearing. So here it is. I'll lay it out flat. Genesis 29, beginning at verse 15. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him like a few days because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her maid. When morning came, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this that you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "This is not done in our country, giving the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. I don't really give my sermons titles, at least not very often. But if I had to give this one a title, I think I'd steal the title from a TV show from the 2 seasons that it was on, 1968 and 1969. It was called Here Come the Brides. And what I mostly remember about it isn't the show itself. I remember the theme song, which oddly enough was recorded by Perry Como and was called Seattle, because the show was set in Seattle in the mid to late 19th century, and there were all these loggers and lumberjacks out there that were just waiting for the women to arrive to start building the town and taming things. Again, kind of a patriarchal thing going on there. Uh, Anyhow, I'm going to put all of that stuff aside. Um, it's a great song, though, and if you want to hear it, I'll put the I'll put a link on the screen. Actually, you may be seeing it already by this point. But anyhow, back to the Bible on this. Jacob, having gone on the run from his brother because he had scammed him one or two times too many, and his brother Esau having had absolutely no patience left with what Jacob had pulled, and having sworn that he would, and he meant it, kill him if he caught him. Jacob had run away to his uncle's house in Haran on his mother's advice. And getting there, he had been assured by his mother he would be safe. Well, he was and he wasn't. He was safe from Esau, but as it turned out, he was not really safe from his mother's brother, his uncle Laban. And on the one hand, there had been Esau's threats to kill him, but it turned out that his uncle was every bit as much of a scoundrel as Jacob had been in his own way. It seems to have been something that ran in the family. Both his mother, Rebecca, and Jacob shared that with Laban. And Laban took advantage of Jacob's affection for his daughter Rachel. And Jacob worked for 7 years as a bride price. There's that patriarchy thing going on. I'm sorry it's here, but it's real. A bride price. I'll work 7 years and I will get my true love as a wife. And the 7 years passed quickly. And the wedding took place, but Jacob didn't look underneath the veil in time. And he discovered that he had married not Rachel, but Leah. And discovered, after some heated discussion with Laban, that he would not now have to work 7 more years to rectify the situation. And during that 7 years, Jacob, not Laban, would be responsible for both women, both the one he had bargained for and the one he had not bargained for. So Laban managed to offload the cost of one of his daughters for 7 years and her upkeep onto Jacob. And by the way, he gave another woman, Zilpah, one of his slaves, his property, as a wedding present to his daughter, as her maid. And so there's another mouth in the household to feed. Jacob would have to support Zilpah as well. So this marriage that Laban arranged and Jacob agreed to turned out to be a windfall for Laban, but a serious financial burden for Jacob. And when you get down to it, it made Jacob's trickery toward Esau look like the work of a rank amateur. If you read on, and I hope you do, you'll see that Jacob's response was game on. He had 7 years during which he had to break even with Laban. And if he can, to get ahead of him. And he set about doing that right away. And as you read on, you'll see how he does it. Now, I'm not in any way endorsing the practice of fraud or deceit. We've all seen the harm that they can do, not only to the immediate victim, but to the whole group of people around them, to the system. Anytime there's rank dishonesty around, it poisons the atmosphere. Everybody has a story about a relative or a neighbor who was almost taken to the cleaners, or maybe they were taken to the cleaners by a fake letter from the IRS or a phone call from somebody who wanted them to go and buy them some gift cards or share somehow their social security number or something along those lines. And somebody unsuspecting or somebody who was trusting, again, gets taken to the cleaners. And it doesn't even have to go through that sort of a thing. Last year, I had to deal with a check that had been stolen from a mailbox outside a post office that somebody had broken into and altered, and then tried to deposit at a bank in another state. And thank goodness for the bank, and thank goodness for the state police who were on the watch for this, because I wasn't the only one on that. And it's not possible to guard against every single bad actor that comes around. But encouraging an atmosphere in which that is normal or accepted, where people say, well, that's just the way things are, that is not a good thing. Laban and Jacob's back and forth contest that is there in Genesis ultimately hurt both of them. And it depended, in the part of the story that we read today, it depended on that already accepted exploitation of women who were treated as property at best and sometimes as financial investments. When we accept that the system is just the system, things begin to go wrong. No, I take it back. Things already are wrong. But nevertheless, this story does illustrate some of the things that Jesus said about operating in systems that have that kind of edge to them. Jesus told his disciples, the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. Just an observation. So he warned his disciples, see, I'm sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Now that's quite a challenge. But it's a challenge that I really believe God's people are up to. We've all heard this saying, which is not in the Bible, but it's still a true one. You've been given great gifts. With great gifts come great responsibility. Use your gift always for good and never for evil. That sounds kind of cartoonish. And It does appear in Spider-Man cartoons. But Jesus understood these things. Street smarts are not necessarily bad. They can do some good. In fact, be smart as a serpent. You may need to if you're dealing with snakes. Jesus himself had to handle some very difficult and delicate situations. And there were people who wanted him out of the way and would do whatever they could to bring that about. Luke tells us they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be honest in order to trap him in what he had said, so as to hand him over to the jurisdiction and authority of the governor. So they asked him, "Teacher, we know that you are right in what you say and teach, and you show deference to no one. But teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, "Show me a denarius. Whose head and whose title does it bear?" They said, "The emperor's." And he said to them, "Then give to the emperor what is the emperor's, but give to God what is God's." There's a good example of how Jesus handled things. Know who you are dealing with. Laban did, or thought he did. Jacob soon also knew. Now, others have used the same ability too, and for good ends. And some of those have been followers of Jesus. The Apostle Paul wanted to get the attention of the Greek philosophers who hung around on the Hill of Mars, the Areopagus in Athens. So he went to where they were gathered. And when he got there, he knew who they were and spoke to them in their terms. And these were honest people. These were not people that were out to get others. But you need to begin with knowledge of who you're talking to, who you're dealing with. Paul generally spoke in the synagogues, and when he did that, he would begin with the scriptures because he knew he was dealing with people who honored the scriptures. But the philosophers on the Areopagus, that was a different crowd. So he began instead with a couple quotations about an overarching God of the whole universe, a notion and a quotation taken from a Stoic philosopher, and then another from a Greek playwright. Paul spoke to them about God. And he said, "In him we live and move and have our being," as even some of your own poets have said, "for we too are his offspring." And Paul went on from there. He didn't win many of them over, but his way of addressing them got them to listen. And that was far more than most outsiders ever got. It was worth a try. Again, as Jesus said when he himself was using parables to teach. Every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household who brings out of his store of treasure what is new and what is old. So, one thing to take from the interchange between Jacob and Laban, with all of its problematic aspects, is to do that, to be creative, to use both what is new and what is old, to know your audience, to understand people, to listen to them, to pay attention, and then to use your ingenuity, because God has given us all great gifts of understanding one another. If we pay attention to one another, it helps God himself to speak through us. To let people know about God's love, it requires us to be aware of them. It requires us to be aware of our world. But it also requires that we just be honest in sharing it. Because it's not like a year's wages, 7 years' wages that can be stolen. It's something that's offered. It's something that's given. Jesus has given us all the things of the world, the bits and pieces of life that he used to tell us all about the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. He used the example of people and how they behave in the marketplace. He used the example of how people behave at a wedding or at a big banquet. He looked at the way the seeds grow from the earth. He looked at the way one house will survive a flood when another gets washed away. He looked at the bread and wine that were left over on the table after a Passover meal with his disciples. And he took those and he said, look, this is how you can be sure that I am with you always, even to the end of the world. Wherever you get together, whenever you break bread, whenever you drink this cup, I am there. It's me with you. Use the ingenuity, the simple things of life that you see, to see God, to show God, to let people know about his love. If Jacob and Laban can use their ways and their wits, how much more can the people seeking not to gain things for themselves, but to share things with others, how much more can we do with the things around us? Even if it's things that can be repurposed from old TV shows. Maybe it's even a song from Perry Como. He didn't write it, but he sang it. Maybe that could be repurposed. There's a rhythm to this world the Lord has given. There's a timing to the whirlwind that we live in. When we listen, we hear through each laugh and each tear how God's love is breaking through with a symphony that's new. Maybe jazz, even blues, songs of heaven. Songs of heaven. There's a story God will tell if we let him. There's a poetry as well rhyming heaven. When we'd spoiled the plot, graceful language forgot, then the word came down to earth, and his love restored our worth. Now he offers us new birth and resurrection. Resurrection. There's a texture to the way that God's hand shapes us. From the basic dust and clay, he awakes us. Then his brush decorates our lives with a glaze that will shimmer and will shine and reflect his light divine. God's glory in his time overtakes us. Overtakes us. Amen.